Dela, it's so good to have you on my podcast. Thank you so much for joining. Today, we're going to speak about pronunciation, and you're an expert on pronunciation. Could you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure, yeah. So again, I'm Dela Martin. I live in Maryland in the United States. I am an English language teacher specializing in pronunciation, and I have a master's degree in teaching English to speakers of other languages. I have taught in public schools. I've taught little kids, 4-year-olds up to people who are 80 years old in community organizations, and I've taught in private language schools. So yeah.
Why are you so passionate about pronunciation? I mostly and primarily work with adults who are non-native speakers of English who want to develop native-like fluency. Their career and the quality of their social life literally depends on how well they speak English, because most of them are immigrants, and how well they can articulate their ideas in English. So I care about pronunciation because it helps me build better relationships with people. But I'm curious about your story. Why do you care and why are you passionate about teaching specifically pronunciation?
I started by having a book club for English learners because I love to read. And I was like, I want, my students to just delve into authentic texts.
Mm.
Like, let's put away all those graded readers. Let's get into like the New York Times best-selling books. Let's get into, young adult fiction and science fiction. And what I realized was it was a pretty tough task for them. What would happen is they would read at home and then they would come and then we'd focus on a short passage and they would read a word, and when they would get to a word that they didn't know, like they were saying it in their head, and they were saying it in their head the wrong way.
Yes.
And so that was when I realized, like, okay, the sound system of English, the vowels, there's a lot more in English than in some other languages.
How did you know that they were saying these words incorrectly in their head? Did you get them to read out loud?
Oh yeah, yeah. So we would all read a certain passage, and we come to class, and I would have that quote up there, and then I would have them read it, and they would tell me, like, I don't know what this word is, and then when I said it, they were like, oh, I know that word. So I realized, like, okay, we need to go back to basics. We need to go back to helping people make sense of the English sound system, because honestly, the way that it's taught in schools is not helpful. It's not helpful.
I'm thinking that it's so important to read out loud. That's my favorite exercise, and I do it all the time. But those people who don't do it and who read silently, they don't even know that they're reading words incorrectly. And many people don't see the connection between reading and good pronunciation because they read
Hmm.
silently to themselves. They understand everything they're reading. They know what the words mean, the words that they see, not the words that they hear. And because they never get this feedback, or because they never get to read anything out loud, they don't even know that they're mispronouncing some words or that they have some pronunciation problems.
Yeah, the connection between reading and speech and speaking, as we all are born, we all learn how to speak. We all pick up speech from our families. Reading is something that we have to be taught, that we have to have exposure to. And the process of learning how to read mirrored as is very similar to the process of learning how to speak. So there's a connection there. There's a connection there. Some of the processes in the brain that you use are very similar.
I usually give people this advice. If you're not a native speaker and you love reading and you think you're going to be expanding your vocabulary by reading more, that's actually the reason why people read. They think they're going to learn a lot more words from books. But I always give them one piece of advice. If you enjoy reading, or if you're reading anything, read at least one paragraph out loud, at least every other day, and have
Hmm.
someone listen to it. Some people are more self-aware, and even when they read it out loud and there's no one else in the room, they themselves can hear that something just doesn't make sense. It's either difficult, or they don't know how to pronounce the words, as you said, or they stumble upon words, or whatever they're hearing simply doesn't make sense. But receiving feedback from someone else is even more valuable.
Oh yeah, I think, yeah, definitely. You could go and you could study phonics, you can study, the International Phonetic Alphabet on your own,
Yes.
but you do need to hear people speaking. You do need to try out these sounds. You do need to get feedback on whether the sounds that you're making are correct. You do need to build up that skill.
Many people resist reading out loud. They have a lot of resistance for this exercise because, like, what do you want from me? Do you want me to
Mhm.
prove that I can read? Like, I'm not 5, I can read. They don't see the reason to read out loud. When you had people read some quotes out loud or a passage out loud, did you ever see that resistance in people to read out loud?
I think I saw it mostly in younger people and like teenagers that I've worked with, not so much in adults. I think the adults who are goal getters, who are motivated, they want to take their language to the next level. They want to keep improving. Maybe it could be just like the community that I live in.
Maybe.
It's just like a different kind of community, but I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that resistance so too much to reading out loud. I mean, I think if I do see a resistance, I think it comes from like a place of intimidation. People feel self-conscious. People feel like if they make a mistake, people are going to laugh at me or they're going to think that I'm stupid. And so because of that, they're like, I'm not even going to try, I think.
Maybe I didn't explain myself well enough, but I would like
Mhm.
to show you a different perspective. What I
Yeah.
actually mean is that when people come to you because they want to learn English and you tell them, let's read out loud, they think it's not serious. They think it's such an easy exercise. Like, no, let's do conditionals. Let's do phrasal verbs. Let's do idioms. Let's do something serious. I'm not 5
Mm.
anymore. Well, why do we need to read out loud? I can read. That's what I'm talking about. I think I've seen a lot of resistance coming
Mm.
from this place. Let's do something challenging because why read? I already can read. But let me tell you a story. I remember myself in primary school. I think in 4th grade, yeah, we had to do speed reading tests. Basically, I'm not sure if you do this in the US, but we had to read out loud as fast as we could for 1 minute, and they counted the number of words we could read. So you had to prove that you're a fluent reader, and they counted the number of words you could read out loud for a minute.
Just words.
No, no, you read a text, they give you a book,
Okay.
and you have to read, and then you have to be fast. The more you read during that minute, the better, the higher score you're going to get. I remember sitting there and I was very aware of the time limit. So I started reading as fast as I could. And I remember this feeling so vividly. I finished reading. They told me, your time is up. Great results. And I sat there and I had no idea what I just read. I
Hmm.
had to actually, and this was in my first language, my first language. And I was a kid and I remember this very clearly. So I had to look at this passage one more time and read it silently to myself to understand what it was that I read.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when people start reading out loud, the same thing happens. They start reading out loud in English
Hmm.
and they get to realize that they don't understand what they're reading.
That does happen. Yeah, what good readers do, they don't speed read. When I was a primary school teacher, our reading tests were very different. Where it was not timed like that for English children learning English, or English speaking children practicing their reading skills. It was not like that. It was just kind of like a different culture. But I do agree, like that is a terrible way to take in information.
Yes.
You're not taking in information. That is why it is so important to know how words are pronounced so that you
Yeah,
know what it means and you can make meaning of it, you know?
exactly. So when you read out loud, not only you need to understand what you're reading, but people who are listening need to understand what it is that you're reading. That's
Yeah.
why pronunciation, stress, rhythm, pitch matter. When people start reading out loud, they realize that nobody understands what they're saying. And I tell them, look, reading out loud is no different from doing a YouTube video and reading from a teleprompter. It's no
Hmm.
different. It's
Yeah.
prepared speech. You have to read. Even
Yeah.
movies, if we think about actors who perform in the movies that we all love, what they do is they read their lines.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're reading from memory. We don't see them read from a piece of paper, but they're reading. That's why reading is such a powerful exercise, especially reading out loud, because it prepares you to speak better. You're learning how to make meaning out of words so that
Mhm.
other people can hear the meaning and not only the words.
Yeah.
And that's why pronunciation matters so much. When
Yeah.
people read with poor pronunciation, that's a problem. Let's talk
Yeah.
about this.
Yeah, sure.
Where is the line between accent and poor pronunciation?
Yeah. So everyone has an accent. I have an accent,
Me
you
too.
know? And I think, accent gets a bad rap because people are kind of like, oh, that's a bad accent or that accent's all wrong. And it's not about right or wrong. It just is, and I think accent is just about wherever you are. If the people who you are surrounded with speak a specific way, and maybe you and another group of people who you're around speak a different way based on the sounds of your first language, that's what makes an accent. It's how the way you speak differs from the community that you're in.
Okay.
That's
So
how people kind of think about accents
when
sometimes.
people hear an accent, they know you're not local. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
That's the first
Yes.
thought. Mhm.
They'll be like, okay, they must have grown up someplace else, or they must speak something else. The question then you're asking is about pronunciation and accent.
What's the difference between, or where is the line between accent and poor pronunciation? A lot of
So
non-native speakers don't really get the difference. They think it's just my
yeah,
accent, but it's in fact poor pronunciation that must be corrected and improved.
poor pronunciation is whenever there's a breakdown in understanding. Whenever you're talking to a person and you say a phrase or you say something and they have to ask you, excuse me, or they have to clarify, they don't understand what you're saying. It was not clear to them. So that is where I find kind of the difference. Like everybody has an accent, everybody has a different way of speaking based on where they grew up. A problem is when people don't understand you.
Let me ask you a question. You represent the American culture. How honest would Americans be? Let's say if I go to the US
Mhm.
and I speak with a terrible accent and I make a lot of pronunciation mistakes, how honest would you be and how patient would you be with me if I tried to explain something to you? How honest would you be with like I'm not sure what you're saying.
Mhm.
So like
It
how
really depends on people. Me as a teacher, I've developed a patience, right? I'm the most patient person ever. Other people might not be so. It really depends. Like there are some people out there who are absolute assholes.
I can tell
Mhm.
I my first language is Russian and our culture is very different
Yeah.
from the American culture, meaning in America you say if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything.
Yeah.
Right? And here, if there's something wrong, you will know about it. Like we
Mhm.
say everything up front.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
major difference, if we're very straightforward, like people who speak the Russian language from birth, it's just in the culture.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why the experience that I have had is that American people are too nice. You
Oh yeah.
just,
We're
in my experience, American people have a lot of patience until they don't.
until they don't. Until they don't. Yeah.
If you're taking too long, they'll just walk away.
Yeah. Yeah.
They will,
I've seen it. Like I've seen it. I mean, it for me as a patient person, and a really like I am a people pleaser. It hurts my heart. But that's just me. I do I do see that people lose patience with you.
but trust me, I have also seen a lot of Americans who live here in Moscow and St. Petersburg and who do their best to learn the Russian language. And it's a very difficult language. And
Mm,
Russian people have no patience for them. Like I have seen so many situations when Americans tried to explain something in Russian, like get a train ticket, how I need to get to this place. And they would get like, what? What? Just say it clearly. What
mhm,
do you mean?
mhm.
And
Straightforward, very
but I
straightforward.
think the reason is that the Russian language is spoken in the post-Soviet countries and there are
Mhm,
no accents. I grew up in Kazakhstan. It's a very large country, the ninth largest country in the world. There is
Mhm.
Russia, which is huge. There's Kazakhstan, there's Ukraine, there's Belarus, and we all speak the same Russian. So Americans are
Mhm.
simply more tolerant to accents, and we have no accents.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
an interesting linguistic phenomenon.
Mm.
But if you went to a Russian school, you speak the same Russian. Nobody can tell where I'm from.
Hmm.
We don't have accents.
That's actually quite fascinating.
Yes, because
Uh,
I used to live in Germany, and people from the north
mhm.
of Germany don't understand people from the south of Germany.
Yeah.
The
You know,
accents are huge. They're different, very different.
that makes a lot of sense because, a lot of times people ask, like, this thing, am I saying it correctly? Am I saying it correctly? And I'm like, well, if you're in the South, that's correct. And if you're in New York, that's correct. If you say it that way, and if you're on the East Coast, that's correct. And if you're in California, and I have a hard time sometimes saying that's wrong. Like, because there could be multiple ways to say something,
And we have
you
a
know?
very clear sense of standard. Like the standard has been ingrained in us since
Hmm.
school. That's the standard.
Yeah, it's a bit more relaxed. Like, one of the words that I want to bring up is the word barrier,
Barrier.
right? Barrier, like a border, a barrier, right?
Oh, okay. A
Between,
barrier, like a language barrier. Okay.
yeah, like a language barrier. So I would say the word barrier, but if you look it up on, the dictionary, you could also say barrier. So half of the people in the US might say barrier, and half the people might say barrier. Maybe the word marry like a person's name,
Yeah.
right? Marry like Merry Christmas.
Hmm.
Uh, is there another Mary? Mary. But like some people say Mary, some people say Mari.
Oh, really?
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Oh.
Half of the people would say it one way. And then it's like it's not wrong. So a lot of times when I'll look up how things are supposed to be written in like the dictionary, I'm like, well, I don't say it that way.
I used to work with a Scottish guy, and he would always say, "Give me some tame," meaning give me some
Mm,
time.
same. Yeah,
And
so but like certain words, I think especially there's no some people say it this way, some people say it that way.
well, these would be the examples of different accents.
Yeah.
What would be the examples of poor pronunciation? Poor pronunciation slows down comprehension, as you said.
Yeah.
Prevents.
Vowel confusion.
Yes.
That's a
Oh,
common one. Vowel confusion. So like when I work with Spanish speakers, I feel like they have five main vowel sounds. And I think in English we have like 12 to 15, including maybe some diphthongs that are in
and
there.
in Russian we have six. Yes.
Oh, six.
Only six. Yes.
So you rely on, one of those six target sounds to fill in lots of little slots.
Yes. Yes. And we
And
do not have long and short vowels.
oh, again, exactly.
That's why it's difficult. But I agree with you that it's so worth it to invest in your
Yeah.
vowels. I like saying that you want to work on one thing that changes many things. And
Mhm.
if you improve your vowels, it will improve everything about how you speak English and how
Yeah.
people hear you. Do you also recommend that people start with vowels rather than with consonants when you start working with them?
I think the vowels are more problematic. I think the vowels are the most problematic just because there are so many and it does require a bit of mouth work.
Yes, a lot of mouth work
um,
actually.
like I this is my smile. Like I do this.
Because we're doing a video, people can see us, but this is what
Yeah.
I tell my students all the time. When
Mhm.
I speak English, I have to open my mouth a lot wider.
Yes.
I have to drop my jaw a lot lower because when I speak my first language, my
Mhm.
lips are barely moving. I don't
Yeah.
need to.
Yeah. And I tell them, have some water with you and have some chapstick because we're going to be doing some work. Exactly. So like, to form the vowels, it's about your jaw, right? It's about your jaw, how how it drops, how open it is, how closed it is. It's about your lips, how wide they are, do they round, you know? It's about your tongue, right? Where is it in your mouth? Is it up high? Is it down low? Is it touching your teeth? Is it pulled back? So those are all the things, those are all the mouth gymnastics that you need to build awareness of in
Mhm.
order to just get those English sounds, get the English sound system. I would say that the vowels are kind of most important, right?
I agree with
Um, but then we also got the consonants. Then we have some problematic consonants. And I think something that's also really tricky is the consonant clusters, right?
yeah.
So when we have like two or more consonants together, some words have four. I don't know if there's anything more than four consonants, one after the other. For the most part, you have to say each and every one of those sounds. You have to.
Is NG considered to be a cluster?
No, that's a sound. Ing, ing.
Mm.
Mhm.
And what do you mean when you say a cluster?
Stripe. The word stripe.
Oh, like
S
stripe, where you have to
T
say every single
R
stripe.
stripe. Stripe.
Oh, I see what you mean. It's not like when four letters make one sound. You're
It's
talking about
like when they usually are at the beginning of the word. I think they can be at the ending of words. Like burst,
burst.
burst, right? RST, burst.
Mm.
That can be tricky because a lot of times when you're trying to make one of the sounds, something drops, or you put a vowel in between it, and that's a mispronunciation.
It was very difficult for me to learn to say the word hangers. When I was 18, I went to the United States for the first time and I worked as a housekeeper at a golf resort.
Okay.
We had an American supervisor who made so much fun of me. It was embarrassing. I was like, what do I do with the hangers? And she was like,
Mhm.
hangers, hangers, can you say
Hangers.
hangers? And
Mhm.
I genuinely couldn't understand what
Mhm.
I was doing wrong. I would
Yeah.
say hungers, instead of
Mhm.
hangers.
Yeah.
That was so
Uh-huh.
difficult for me. And
Uh,
the story just demonstrates that the amount of feedback I received was insane from her.
mhm.
She was frustrated with me, but it didn't help because
No.
no nobody explained to me how I could correct my pronunciation. I respect people who teach phonetics and I respect the idea that we have to learn every single sound and that courses on phonetics can help people. But I work with people who already can speak. They
Mhm.
can speak English. They can explain themselves. They don't need to learn the letters. They don't need to learn the phonics. They need to understand how to correct their mistakes. They have some patterns and they have been carrying these patterns for years and they've been repeating their mistakes for years. Many of them are not aware of their mistakes. They think they just have an accent and they don't know how to correct them. You can learn phonetics all day long. You can listen to the correct pronunciation on YouTube all day long, but it doesn't help. That's my point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because people listen to it, but they can't repeat. Of course, she told me hangers correctly
Mhm.
a million times, but I couldn't repeat after her.
Yeah.
I just couldn't.
Mhm.
But if she explained to me what I was doing in my mouth incorrectly and what I should have done in my mouth correctly, I would have learned that word faster. It took me a few
Mhm.
years to master that one word.
Yeah. That's that ah sound, hangers. Is it
Yeah, so I couldn't, I would say ng, instead of ng.
uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So I'm trying to make the point, well, that's my opinion, that if you struggle with correct pronunciation, if you want to improve your pronunciation, learning every separate sound is useful only to a certain extent. It makes little sense to listen to correct pronunciation as much as possible.
Yeah,
That's what.
because it's pronunciation is in the brain. Pronunciation is in the brain. It's not in the mouth. It
Yeah.
is about building that muscle memory. It is about building that awareness of the sounds. It is about being able to differentiate that sound from other sounds. It's brain work. So it's not just repeat after me, repeat after me, repeat after me.
Because you repeat it
And
exactly the way you always do it.
yeah, you repeat the mistake.
Because people listen to correct English
Yeah.
all the time. They watch
Yeah.
movies, they listen to the radio, maybe they live in the United States. They have access to correct pronunciation. You go to YouTube, you have access to correct pronunciation, but people can't repeat.
You need to have that feedback, whether it's, kind of, heartbreaking, from that person that you worked with, the coworker, or whether it's from a supportive environment or someone being like, let me help you, show you what you need to do with, your mouth positioning. Where should your tongue be? Let's practice a list of other words that are similar. Let me hear it. Let you hear that difference of what you were saying.
Mhm.
Let you be able to hear those differences. Let you develop the ear.
Exactly. You need to develop your ear. It sounds simple and obvious, but to be honest, I myself started working on my vowels only 2 years
Mhm.
ago. I started
Yeah.
consciously working on my vowels when I received feedback from my American coach who
Mhm.
said, I want you to sound more consistent because half of your vowels
Mhm.
are correct and half of them are not correct. And
Mhm.
that's when I was like, oh, and I didn't even know that I had to look into vowels. Even when she gave me that feedback with hangers, I didn't even know that I could fix it, that there was something
Yeah.
I could do. I didn't know that I could do some mouth work. I just didn't
Mhm.
know. It didn't even cross my mind.
Yeah.
But I see that it's if you want to correct your pronunciation, you need to do speech therapy.
Mhm. It is a bit
You
of,
know,
it is,
really,
yeah.
like what are these people called? Speech
Speech
pathologists?
pathologist, yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that can be most helpful
Mhm.
for people who are struggling with pronunciation because listening to correct pronunciation, you can do it all day long. It doesn't really help if you're not
No.
able to repeat. But understanding what you're doing wrong in your mouth and fixing that in your mouth, this is something
Mhm.
that can help you improve really fast.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think the problem too is like when I'm teaching, I don't like to use the word long and short vowels. I think it's very confusing.
How do you
Um,
name that?
I will literally go to the E as in beat and just say the word. I will also let people know that spelling is not going to help you because English is not a phonetic language. We do not say everything as it is written. And that is another like huge problem that people have is that they go, oh, like the S makes this sound all the time. No, it doesn't. But for some reason, this is how we teach kids English, reading skills. We teach them this makes a this sound. A only says that sound, and
Yeah.
it's not the case. And that's also the reason why we have a literacy problem because it's confusing, and we're not being told like the A letter can make lots of other sounds too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What common mistakes can you hear students make? What sounds or vowels do people mostly struggle with? And of course,
Mhm.
depending on their first language, they're going to struggle with different things.
Yeah.
But what do you see are the major problems?
So I have a list of words here that I've seen. Right here, I have the word lacking, lacking. That, and I think that's something that came up before. That ah sound, as in
Cat.
what cat, right? And I've heard people say like. So like if you don't have that ah sound in your language, it might be liking enough food for the winter,
Yes,
instead
or
of
lacking, or like a
lacking.
short a lacking instead of lacking.
Yeah, yeah. So it's hard for me to make these mistakes because this is my first language, but it's something that I've heard. And then like the E sound in English instead of, I've heard like really, really. I've heard really, you
Mm,
know, really, really, really instead of really, right? So that's where it's that E sound where your lips are kind of like really like almost your jaw is almost closed and your lips are really kind of like a smile, right? And then your tongue is forward.
really,
Really,
really.
really, right?
What's the
Uh,
first thought that you have when somebody says really? Do you feel stuck or like are you trying to process what they say when somebody says really? Is
yeah. I,
really? Mhm.
I mean, it depends on the sentence, but I think that my like when I hear a sentence and I don't hear the sounds of English that I'm expecting, I go, wait, what? What
Mm.
are they saying? Like the whole sentence, I'm like, I have to like, can you say that again?
So when,
I don't understand sometimes.
let me check if I'm hearing you
Mhm.
correctly. So if a person makes a mistake in one word, you might lose the whole sentence. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. But I know I've looked at other examples and I've gotten stuck on wait, what were they trying to say? And I've kind of missed the rest, you know?
I did a lot of public talks, and I can tell
Mm.
from experience that even if a speaker is very prepared, but if they make basic pronunciation mistakes, it's super difficult to listen to them for an extended period of time. If somebody delivers a 45-minute keynote presentation, they say the instead of the,
Yeah.
or they say luck instead of lack, it's super difficult to follow them, even though
Yeah.
they might be saying something super important, something innovative, but you just can't get it, and you get tired of listening to them after the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
want more people to hear this message, because the people I work with, they want to give public talks at international conferences. They want to get English speaking clients, but then you need to learn how to solve it. The problems that your English
Yeah.
clients are going to have, you need to listen to them, you need to understand them, you need to explain things to them, you need to sell to them. And people need to be comfortable listening to you,
Yeah.
longer than a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. So if it's something that you really want to work on is being heard,
Yeah.
then you need to work on your pronunciation.
Just
Being
today.
understood.
Being understood and heard. Is that what you?
Yeah.
Just today I heard this quote. Someone said, communication is not what you intend, it's what's heard. I think that drives the point home.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can think,
Totally.
oh, but that's what I wanted to say. Like, it doesn't matter anymore because people didn't hear that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can we look at some real footage
Yeah. Let's try it.
of how people talk? These are my students. Let's listen to some fragments of the meetings that I had with students, and let me know what you hear. What would you recommend this person does? And what mistakes can you hear? Can we do that?
Okay. Yeah.
I may say something.
Please go ahead.
After watching the videos, I was expecting a very structured methodology, and by this webinar, by this Zoom meeting, I thought that I was totally right, and I was feeling more secure, and I was feeling more optimistic that I will use the method and progress.
Okay. So the first thing is the word after. After. I heard after. After, right?
Let's find this word. Let's try to listen to it again. Where did she say that?
After watching the videos.
Yeah. So that word, I'm hearing more of like awe. So that's the back vowel. She's saying awe instead of the ah sound. And to make that ah sound, your jaw is like forced open, the widest it could be. Like you see tongue. The tongue is forward and your lips are tense.
Let me try. After. Is that correct?
You could go bigger.
After?
Yes.
After.
Yes.
The vowel is the same as in the word black or cat.
Yes. So your mouth is big. It's probably the biggest. And your tongue is in the front and your lips are tense. They're not loose. They're tense.
But your tongue is relaxed. Is that right?
Your tongue is
Relaxed.
not doing much but it's in the front. And so you should see tongue. You should see you should see tongue. Well, that's that's an exaggeration, but
and the way she said it was more like an olive, right?
Her tongue came back.
Like in the word olive or job. Is that right?
After.
Or awesome.
Awesome. So your tongue is back for all of those. Yeah.
After.
Yeah.
Good. I'm practicing too.
And then I think also in terms of consonants, the word methodology, methodology. I heard methodology.
Let's talk about it, because a lot of people think it's not important,
Mhm.
not critical. A lot of English learners, I mean, how
Yeah.
critical is it for you? Like, does it immediately stop you? Like, what did you say? Or is it okay?
I think just it's in I think it's important if you want to come across a certain way, if you want to feel more confident, if you don't want people to be like, what? Then I think it's important to get that TH sound in English, in
She
American English.
she
Mhm.
made this mistake in two words, methodology or method, and I think.
Ah, yes, I was in, yeah, I think, right?
Let's find I think one more time.
This
Mhm.
webinar, by this Zoom meeting, I thought that I was totally right. And
I thought.
Taught, yeah, I taught. So that's that sound, right? So that's your tongue is forward, touching your top front teeth. Thought.
What's your first reaction as somebody on the other end, as somebody who's listening? I taught,
I might be confused. What were you teaching? Was that
ah,
taught? Were you teaching something in the past tense?
was feeling more secure, and I was feeling more optimistic that I will use the method and progress in my flows.
so she said thought, not think. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I hear she said progress when she meant
Mhm.
progress because it's a verb.
Progress. Yeah.
Mhm.
Progress.
Progress is a noun. Progress
Mhm.
is a verb.
Exactly. So depending on where you put the stress,
Yeah.
it changes it. So yeah.
Does it also slow down comprehension when
Yes. I think yes, definitely. And because the listener is trying to understand the meaning, and then they start focusing on, wait, what was that word? It's for me, helping people with their pronunciation is about helping them build confidence, to get up on these stages, to volunteer to speak in meetings, to use English for what they need in their life to succeed. If you want to show up in the world with confidence and with being how awesome you are, it's something that's worthwhile if it's something that you want to do, if it's important to you.
for me it's important because it helps me build relationships. I don't want people to struggle. I don't want them to go like, what did you say, after
Yeah.
every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
I I would not want that. I worked in the office once in
Mhm.
my life, and I used to have a boss, and he
Mhm.
taught me one important lesson. He said all people fall into two categories: people who make your life easier or people who make your life harder. So
Yeah.
be in the second category. I don't want people to struggle understanding me when I explain something to them, something that
Mhm.
matters to both of us.
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah.
want to take their time. I have another story, a very good story that can
Mhm.
illustrate the point. In 2014, I went to Luanda. That's the
Oh.
capital of Angola. My American friends worked on an oil rig there, and they
Oh,
lived on an
wow.
American compound. And they had people, local people, who would take them to work every day, who would drive them to work every day. I didn't know, honestly. The official language,
Portuguese.
the official language of Angola is Portuguese.
Yes.
Felt super helpless when I came there. I couldn't communicate with anyone. Nobody spoke English.
Mhm.
And I don't speak Portuguese. One morning, we got in the car because a driver came to pick my friend up and to take them to work. And I was, off somewhere else, but we were in the same car. And my friend goes like, oh, let's go with John. He speaks okay English. That's why he picked that driver. Let's go with John. He speaks okay English. And I asked him, what is okay English? And he
Mhm.
said there for a second. He told me, well, it's when he gives you words, but it's your job to make a sentence out of these words.
Sounds like brain work.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was his definition of okay English.
Yeah.
They were just giving him words, and he was trying to
Mhm.
figure out what these words mean. So I guess I don't want to speak like John.
Okay.
I
Okay.
don't want to give people a job to make meaning out of the words that I said. I want to deliver
Yeah.
meaning
Yeah.
in English.
I hear you. That must have been a culture shock.
Yes, it was. It was.
Uh-huh.
But it was fun.
Yeah, it's
Let's,
awesome.
let's listen to another example.
Okay.
I was not sure because when I was reading it and was trying to keep the rhythm, the stress shifted.
Yes.
And that's why I was not sure. So, what is the correct pronunciation? And I checked it. And so, those words, I internalized them.
Mm-hmm. Ah, okay. So here I heard the word reading is used instead of reading.
Oh, let's listen again.
Right?
How did she say the word reading? Let's listen to it one more time.
I was not sure because when I was reading it,
That was too short. Reading it instead of reading it. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So with this one, so the jaw is mostly closed, the tongue is forward, and then the lips are tense. E.
Let me try. Reading.
Yeah.
Read.
So it's closer and just very tense. Reading. E.
Yeah, I tell people.
And it's longer. You say it longer. You have to kind of stretch out that E.
Read.
Reading.
I think that it's
Reading.
challenging to connect such a long word with the next
Mhm.
word, which is very short. It. I was reading it.
it.
Am I doing it correctly? As I was reading it.
Stretch it out some more.
As I was reading it.
Yeah, reading it.
Even
As I was reading it.
as I was reading it. Is that
Yeah.
better? Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Mhm.
Thank you. What else did
Mhm.
you hear in this?
So the word internalize. What was the internalize?
Let's listen again.
so those words, I internalized them.
Yeah. So internalize.
It
It's
does
missing
sound like an
something.
antenna.
Antenna, right? Internalize.
Internal.
Internalize. So it seems like there's a dropped consonant. Internalize.
But that's also the wrong vowel.
And that
Yes.
sound as in bet
Yes.
is there instead of the and
Can we put a finger on the mistake? Is the mistake that she used the wrong vowel? She said internalized instead of internalized, or is the mistake that she dropped the R?
I think the first mistake is the switch up of the vowel.
Mm.
That is that sound, and she wants to kind of make an sound. That's a center vowel. That could be a schwa almost, and an R. Internalized.
Let me try. Am I doing this correctly? Internal and internalize.
Yes, internalize. So that one, there's just the tongue is in the center of your mouth. It's not forward, and there's not much going on with your lips. It's more relaxed. Internalize.
The way I feel it, this vowel is happening right in the middle of your mouth. Your lips are not moving. Let me say a few other words where I can hear this.
Yeah.
Purple, t-shirt, bird, courage.
So there's a complexity here. It's the R. It's the R.
Uh-huh.
Internalize. So the R is also important. It's like the complexity is the adding the R to it. She seems to have dropped it in that sentence. And I think that's why it's both. She uses the wrong vowel sound and then she drops the R. And to make this word, you need to make that R sound. And the R sound is another whole bag of words.
When I said these words, did I make a mistake in bird, purple, courage?
No, because your R is there.
Oh, I see now. Okay, I see your point
your
now.
R is there.
Mm-hmm.
So it turns into a different word. Internalize.
Let's listen to it one more time. There was one more word after reading.
When I was reading it and was trying to keep the rhythm.
What did she say here?
Is it the word rhythm? Rhythm.
Keep the rhythm. That's what she said here. Let's listen one more time.
When I was reading it and was trying to keep the rhythm,
Kip. Did you hear that? Kip?
Keep.
Yeah.
Keep. Or
So
Mhm.
that's that E, that's the same E, right? Keep,
Mhm.
right? Eh. You don't really see my
Yeah, like English. The lips are not moving. Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like maybe in her first language that is probably very popular. Is like the go-to.
We
Eh?
have only one E, and that's
Uh,
E. It's
uh-huh.
it's something in between.
Okay.
Her first language is also Russian, and it's our E is something in between keep and keep.
Yeah, so that's what happens, I think, is a lot of times, you take your first language as vowel systems,
Mhm.
and then you just try and place it into
Of course.
all the words.
You do it
All
because
the
that's what
words.
you know. That's all you know. That's familiar.
Yeah.
Did she say the word rhythm correctly?
Rhythm. Rhythm.
Let's listen one more time, because the first time I showed you this video, you said you didn't understand what she said at all.
when I was reading it and was trying to keep the rhythm,
I think what may have happened in that case was that I got stuck on another word, and I was trying to figure out the whole meaning of the sentence. I got stuck because she inserted a word and then she switched,
Mm.
and I was trying to understand, like, wait, book, shift. And I was trying to understand like where the sentence was, the whole meaning of it.
Yeah, she wanted to say move, then she changed her mind and she said shift, and she lost you there.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, all in all, she sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I sometimes make mistakes in my speech as well. So I'm not trying to, what's the word? She sounds like she's doing a really good job, and that there was always things that we can work on, especially those vowels,
Yeah, we're trying to define the difference between pronunciation mistakes and accent.
Yeah.
So would you encourage her to work on her E, keep?
Definitely. Definitely. Just being able to kind of expand her understanding of those front vowels to help her make those sounds more clearer.
Yeah, yeah. Great. And let's listen to one more piece. Let's listen to a man. What can you hear when this person speaks?
I have another option, another flat near here, and we're sleeping in another place.
Okay. Near is near.
And what mistake did he make?
It's that same E sound, E. And then near, and then I'm telling you, these R's are tricky. Near.
Am I doing it correctly now? Near.
Yeah. So it's like you do the E sound, and then you have to move into the sound.
Yeah. I when I'm looking at myself right now, I see that my lips are stretching and then they're coming to the
It's like an
near.
R. It's not it's like an R colored vowel. Near.
Yeah. Near.
Because that.
Oh, you move your lips closer to the center, like you
Near.
near.
Yeah, you can isolate and you can focus on the, E, I, ah, all those sounds. But it's really about getting the muscle memory to make your mouth shift from sound to sound.
Yes.
To sound.
And that's the most difficult part.
Yeah. So so that's why, like, you can go and like go ah, e, ah, you can do all that, back vowels, center vowels, front vowels, but it's that combining the different sounds together, because language is random. Language is not, what is that word? It's the word, and I'm losing my words, that means spontaneous.
Spontaneous, yes. My favorite word. That's my favorite word. 'Cause I want to be clear when I am spontaneous in English.
Yeah.
He said near here. Do we have
Uh-huh.
two identical sounds in these words?
Near here, near here, near here, near
Yeah, he
here,
said,
near
I have a friend near here.
near here,
Is this the
here,
same vowel in the word here?
near here. Sometimes when I get stuck, I go to the dictionary and I look up, I go dictionary.com and I look up what the phonetics of it says to see what they say. That's like they're like, oh, this is how it should be. But as we know in American English, it can kind of be, all over the place.
Let's do it.
Here. Yeah. Dictionary.com.
I like the Cambridge Dictionary, but we can.
Isn't it British English?
It shows you both.
Okay, good.
British and American.
Okay.
Here.
So
Here.
we've got that R colored vowel.
Well, we can
Here.
go to, how did you say, dictionary.com?
Yeah.
We can go to dictionary.com and see if this
Mhm.
dictionary offers a different pronunciation.
Yeah.
Here.
Here. So they have it with
Here.
a schwa.
And
Here.
it's just
Here.
Mhm.
so. Is this a long vowel or do we need to stretch our lips?
Here.
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 I wouldn't say, I think it's very similar to near. Here.
Let's check near.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's exactly, you see, it looks exactly the same,
Near.
Here.
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 Mhm.
which tells me these words need to sound the same.
Mhm.
Near here.
Near here.
Does it sound correct when I'm saying that? Near here?
Yes.
Near here?
Yeah. Near here.
They're the same. It's the same
Mhm.
vowel. The
Yeah.
same sound.
Near here. Near here. Mm-hmm.
I think this person said slipping instead of sleeping. Did you hear that too?
Oh.
Let's listen one more time.
I have another option, another flat near here, and we are sleeping in another place.
Slipping. Uh-huh.
Does he also need to work on E, sleeping?
Yes. So that's definitely that same vowel, that E, sleeping, sleeping,
I wanna-
sleeping.
I remember repeating what he said. I think I might have made the mistake too. Let's listen. So you're sleeping in another place and you spent,
Yeah.
I made the same mistake.
Yeah.
I said slipping,
Sleeping.
where I should have said sleeping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because it, again, with meaning, right? Slip is to fall.
Yes,
You know? And you're like, oh, where did you fall? Where did you slip?
just
So
like
those things-
tripping, right? Tripping,
Yeah.
slipping.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's falling. And I think it's psychologically challenging because you need to spend so much time on one syllable.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what a lot of people do in their first language. I think it's just
Mhm.
psychologically challenging that you have to spend so much time there.
But then I think if you're practicing it, you build up the awareness, then it kind of becomes second nature and you don't have to go back to it. Like when I've worked with students, once I've shown them like, hey, listen out for this, listen at how this is different from that sound, then they've gotten it. And I've seen them, like get it right away, get it pretty quickly once they realize the differences in the sounds.
That's the whole point of practice.
Mhm.
You want to build enough muscle memory and enough self-awareness so that it
Mhm.
becomes second nature and you don't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah.
You speak correctly. How
Yeah.
long does it take for people to unlearn those unhealthy pronunciation patterns and learn to speak better, to correct their pronunciation? In your experience, how long can that take?
I think it depends on motivation. So I know you talk about how you have some people who are like, I don't really want to read aloud. What's the point? I know how to read. It takes motivation and it takes like giving it a try and it takes putting yourself out there, making those speeches and doing it, actually speaking to people in the real world. I've seen it once people kind of practice it and once they build awareness of it, I've seen them make changes like right away.
Right
know?
away.
Yeah. Once it clicks, one of my students is a member in my church,
Mhm.
and she has to get up and read Bible verses, every week, or not every week. She does it like, once a month or something. But when she has to get up, like that was something that was kind of nerve-wracking for her.
Mhm.
We would meet weekly, and I would tell her, like, you have to get those final consonant sounds. You have to make sure that you're pronouncing the past endings, walked. Like she was just missing those. And I saw
What's her first language?
Spanish.
Oh, I see. Mhm.
Yeah. Spanish speaker. And so I saw her make those changes every week and build more confidence and speaking in front of a church.
Maybe I'm a slow learner. I can tell from my own experience. I started
Yeah.
consciously practicing my vowels about a year and a
Yeah.
half ago
Yeah.
or 2 years ago. And I quickly got the differences. I could
Yeah.
hear the differences. I got that quickly, but I would repeat what I knew.
Mhm. Thinking about like where you are, she's been, in the US for many years, surrounded by English, speaking English, comfortably, but, with her, pronunciation errors that she makes. So it also depends on like a lot of other factors.
Of course, yeah. But I just want to share my story so that people don't get
Mhm.
discouraged, so that they know that other scenarios are also possible.
Sure.
I noticed a clear improvement a year later when I
Mhm.
listened to my own podcast, when I listened to my older YouTube videos. That's when it clicked. Oh, I've been practicing all this time. And then I was able to hear the difference.
Mhm.
This is when I was like, oh, it's working.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the difference was huge.
Yeah.
And I used the color vowel
Yeah.
chart because it really helped me associate every vowel with a color. That was very helpful. But I just kept practicing until
Yeah.
I heard the difference. And it took me about a year. Now I still make mistakes, you can see, like
Mhm.
slipping or something, but I can hear those very quickly. And
Mhm.
I correct myself. There is still a lot of work to do, but it's so much better than 2 years ago.
Mhm. So yeah, for everybody it's different,
Mhm.
you know?
Course. But it's not like you can learn all the vowels and change overnight.
No.
It doesn't work. The challenge is not that you have to learn them. I think you can learn them very quickly. The challenge is
Yeah.
that you have to unlearn your habit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Mhm.
that's the most difficult part. This is what takes the longest.
Mhm. Mm.
You've been listening to me speak. Would you give me feedback on my vowels? Is there anything I need to work on?
Again, you're putting me on the spot. Because there is nothing that you have said to me that has stopped me from being like, what? I haven't heard anything. And you're an English teacher. You've been teaching for many, many years. You're very experienced. There's nothing that stopped me.
Okay, thank you.
You
I'm
know?
open for feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
All
So,
right. Usually when I go to the US, the feedback that I get, coming back to what you said at the beginning of this episode, you said when a person has an accent, you hear that they're not from here.
yeah.
That's what you understand immediately.
Mhm.
And a lot of people tell me when I go to the US, they tell me, you sound like you went to some kind of private school with a bunch of international kids. So you have a very
Mm.
interesting accent. I can't place it geographically, but you sound
Yeah,
like someone who went to a private school with a bunch of international kids.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, could be.
They
Mhm.
can't place it, so
Yeah. Can't place it.
okay.
They
And
just have to get to know you and ask you more questions. Yeah.
what would you recommend people do if they want to start working on improving their vowels?
No man is an island. You cannot do this alone. You need to build up this awareness for these sounds. You need to talk to other people and get feedback on the sounds that you're producing, and get help from people who are more familiar with the sounds of English. And you need to get out there and like try it and make the mistakes.
Yeah.
I think, like, don't be afraid of being perfect. You don't have to sound like me. You have to sound like you. but just making sure that you're being clear. And like, if someone is like, like, what? What did you say? Not to get discouraged and know that like, this is one of the, I think like pronunciation, I really love that it's an area in which you can make changes in this. You can do something about your pronunciation errors. It's not hopeless. It is possible to change this. You can train your brain. You can train the muscles in your face to make these sounds. It's possible.
And I like that you're saying that it's very important to not get discouraged when people don't understand you.
Yeah.
They're simply the people, you have to be very grateful. At least that's my attitude. Thank you for telling me what I should work on.
Yeah.
I'm super excited that you're gonna teach a group in our community.
Yeah.
All the community members are going to get very specific feedback on their vowels and their pronunciation.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. All right. Thank you so much for this conversation. It's been insightful, inspiring. I really enjoyed it. I am enjoying it so much that I'm not keeping track of time. Is there anything you would like to say, or is there anything else we should say?
It was a wonderful conversation. So I just want to thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being on the show and for taking your time to have this conversation with me. I look forward to our work together. And if somebody has a question for me or for Dela, please leave your question in the comments. We'll do our best to answer them. Answer, is that correct?
Yeah, answer. I heard it right.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Dela.
Bye.
Bye.